They sat me at the kids' table at my sister's wedding. Not as a joke, not as a mistake. On purpose. And by the time dessert was served, I'd made a decision that would destroy my entire family. But let me start from the beginning, because the revenge I got was years in the making, and what I'm about to tell you will make you question everything you know about family loyalty. My sister Emma is 3 years older than me. Growing up, we were never close. She was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. Perfect grades, perfect boyfriend, perfect college acceptance letters. She was everything they wanted in a daughter. I was the kid who got average grades, played too many video games, and couldn't seem to live up to their expectations no matter how hard I tried. Our parents adored her. Me? I was just kind of there. The supporting character in Emma's perfect story. But I accepted it. That was just how our family worked. Emma was the star, and I was the backup. When Emma got engaged to Michael, a guy from a wealthy family who worked in finance and drove a BMW, my parents were over the moon. They immediately started planning this massive wedding. And I mean massive. No expense was spared. They rented out a historic ballroom that cost more than most people's annual salary. They hired a celebrity wedding planner who'd done events for actual movie stars. They ordered custom floral arrangements that cost more than my car. Every single detail was meticulously planned. My mom was on the phone every single day, coordinating with vendors, picking out linens, obsessing over the seating chart. It was the event of the year in our social circle. Everyone was talking about it. Emma asked me to be part of the wedding party. Not a groomsman, just an usher. It stung a little, but I figured it was better than nothing. At least I was included, right? I went to the rehearsal dinner. I smiled for all the photos. I bought an expensive suit because Emma insisted everyone in the wedding party needed to look cohesive. I even spent $300 on a gift from their registry, a set of crystal wine glasses they'd probably use twice and then forget about. I did everything I was supposed to do. I played the role of the supportive little brother. The day of the wedding arrived, and I showed up early. I helped set up place cards on tables. I directed guests to their seats. I made small talk with relatives I barely knew, answering the same questions over and over. How's work? Are you seeing anyone? When are you going to settle down like your sister? I smiled through all of it. I did everything I was supposed to do. And then, about an hour before the ceremony, I went to check the seating chart to see where I'd be sitting during the reception. Table 14, the kids' table. I stared at that seating chart for a full minute, convinced I was reading it wrong. But no, my name was right there, printed in fancy calligraphy, next to my 7-year-old nephew, my cousin's 4-year-old twins, and a couple of other random children I didn't even recognize. Meanwhile, my parents were at table 1 with the bride and groom. My aunts and uncles were at table 2. My cousins, most of whom were younger than me, were at table 3. Even my second cousins, people I'd met maybe twice in my entire life, were seated with the adults. But me? I was with the toddlers. I thought it had to be a mistake. There was no way Emma would actually do this on purpose. So I found her. She was in the bridal suite, surrounded by her bridesmaids, getting her makeup touched up. Everyone was laughing and taking photos. I pulled her aside as politely as I could and said, "Hey, I think there's an error with the seating chart. I'm listed at the kids' table." She barely looked at me. "That's not an error." I laughed, thinking she had to be joking. "Come on, Emma. I'm 28 years old. You can't seriously expect me to sit with a bunch of toddlers." She turned to face me, and her expression was ice cold. No warmth, no sisterly affection, just cold indifference. "Look, we had limited seating. You're not really close with anyone here, and you don't have a +1, so I figured you'd be fine sitting with the kids. They need supervision anyway, and you're good with kids, right?" I just stood there, completely stunned. "I'm your brother." "Yeah. And you're also single and don't really fit in with the rest of the family dynamic. It's not personal. Just sit there, eat your dinner, and don't make this into a thing. I have a million other things to worry about today." She turned back to her bridesmaids, dismissing me completely. One of them gave me a sympathetic look, but no one said anything. I walked out of that room feeling a kind of humiliation I'd never experienced before. Not anger, not even sadness. Just this deep, hollow feeling that I genuinely didn't matter to her, or to anyone in my family. I was just a placeholder, someone they could push aside when convenient. I sat through the ceremony in a daze. I watched Emma walk down the aisle in her $15,000 dress, looking like a princess from a fairy tale. I watched my parents cry tears of joy. I watched Michael slip the ring onto her finger and kiss her like she was the only person in the world. And the whole time, all I could think about was that kids' table, about how little I mattered to any of them. When the reception started, I sat down at table 14. My nephew looked up at me, confused, and asked, "Why are you sitting with us?" I didn't have an answer. What was I supposed to say? That his aunt thought so little of me that she'd rather seat me with children than with my own family. I watched my parents at the head table, 30 feet away, laughing and toasting and giving speeches about how proud they were of Emma, about what an amazing daughter she was, about how lucky Michael was to be marrying her. Not once did they glance over at me. Not once did they seem to register that their son was sitting there, surrounded by juice boxes and chai watch stick and tenders, being babysat by a confused 7-year-old. I stayed for about an hour. I ate my dry chicken. I made awkward small talk with a 4-year-old about dinosaurs. I watched everyone else have the time of their lives while I sat there, invisible. And then I left. I didn't say goodbye to Emma. I didn't say goodbye to my parents. I just walked out. No one noticed. When I got home, I sat in my apartment for hours, still wearing that expensive suit, replaying the whole night in my head. And that's when I remembered something. Something my mom had told me 6 months earlier, in confidence, during one of her rare moments of vulnerability. Emma wasn't my father's biological daughter. My mom had told me this during a late-night conversation after she'd had too much wine. We'd been talking about family, about the past, and suddenly she just broke down. She told me she'd had an affair 29 years ago, right before I was born. Emma was the result of that affair. My dad didn't know. He'd raised her as his own his entire life, never questioned it, never suspected. And my mom had carried that secret for nearly 3 decades, buried deep, never telling anyone. She made me promise not to tell anyone. She said it would destroy the family, that my dad would be devastated, that Emma would never forgive her. And I kept that promise. For 6 months, I carried that secret. I never told Emma. I never told my dad. I never even hinted at it. I buried it because I thought that's what you were supposed to do for family. You protect them. You keep their secrets. You put them first. But sitting in my apartment that night, still wearing that expensive suit, still tasting the humiliation of that kid's table, I realized something. They didn't protect me. They never had. I was an afterthought, a placeholder. The kid who didn't quite measure up to the golden child who wasn't even my father's biological daughter. I'd spent my entire life being second best to someone who wasn't even part of the family by blood, while I was the actual son, and I'd been treated like I didn't matter. So I made a decision that would change everything. I went to my computer and I typed up a letter. It took me 3 hours. It was 3 pages long. I explained everything. The affair, the timeline, the DNA test my mom had shown me as proof, the years of secrecy, the lies, and I explained why I was done keeping their secrets. Why I was done protecting people who'd never protected me. Why I was done being invisible in my own family. I printed 2 copies, one for Emma, one for my dad. I put them in envelopes, addressed them, and I sat there staring at them for another hour, debating whether I should actually do this. And then I thought about that kid's table, about Emma's cold dismissal, about my parents' speeches about how perfect she was, about a lifetime of being second best. And I walked to the mailbox and dropped them in. I mailed them the next morning. 3 days later, all hell broke loose. My phone started ringing nonstop. First, it was Emma. She was screaming so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. She called me every name in the book. She said I was jealous, vindictive, pathetic, that I'd ruined her life out of spite because I couldn't handle not being the center of attention for once. She said I was a terrible brother, that I'd destroyed her marriage before it even started, that she'd never forgive me. Then my mom called. She was crying hysterically, begging me to tell everyone it was a lie, that I'd made it up, that I'd misunderstood what she'd told me, that I was confused. But I wasn't confused, and she knew it. She knew I was telling the truth, and now everyone else knew it too. Then my dad called. He didn't yell, he didn't cry. His voice was just hollow, empty. He said, "Is it true?" And I said, "Yes." And there was this long silence. And then he said, "I need some time," and he hung up. That was it. No anger, no accusations, just devastation. I didn't hear from any of them for 2 weeks, but I heard from other people. Cousins calling to yell at me, aunts sending me angry texts, family friends asking what was wrong with me. Apparently, the news had spread through the entire family like wildfire, and Emma's perfect marriage, it was falling apart. Michael had found out about the letter, and when he learned that his new in-laws had been hiding something that massive, something that fundamental, he started questioning everything. What else had they lied about? What else were they hiding? Could he trust anything they said? He moved out 3 weeks after the wedding, filed for separation a month later. Emma blamed me for ruining her marriage. My parents blamed me for destroying the family. My extended family took sides. Half of them said I was justified, that Emma had humiliated me and I had every right to defend myself. Half of them said I was cruel, that I'd weaponized a family secret to get petty revenge, that I'd gone nuclear over something trivial. But here's the thing. Not one of them apologized for that kid's table. Not one of them acknowledged that they'd treated me like I didn't matter. Not one of them seemed to understand that I'd spent my entire life being the afterthought, the backup plan, the kid who didn't quite measure up. And I was done. I was done being invisible. Emma tried to reach out a few months later. She sent me a long text message saying she understood why I was hurt, but that what I did was unforgivable. That I'd weaponized a family secret to get revenge. That I was selfish and cruel, and that she'd never be able to forgive me. That I'd destroyed her life over a seating arrangement. I didn't respond, because it wasn't about a seating arrangement. It was about a lifetime of being treated like I didn't matter. My dad tried to reconcile too. He asked me to meet him for coffee about 6 months after everything exploded. I went. He looked older, tired. He told me he was devastated, but that he still loved Emma, that she was still his daughter, biology or not, that he'd raised her and that wasn't going to change, and I respected that. I told him I understood, but then I asked him if he understood why I'd done it, and he just looked at me and said, "You could have talked to us." I could have, but I did talk to Emma. I told her the seating was wrong, and she dismissed me. I could have talked to my parents, but they'd spent my entire life prioritizing her over me. Words weren't going to change decades of being second best. So no, I don't regret what I did. I don't regret sending those letters. Because the people who were supposed to protect me, the people who were supposed to see me, didn't. And I'm not going to spend the rest of my life keeping their secrets while they treat me like I'm invisible. They sat me at the kids' table, and I made sure they'd never forget it.